Well, welcome to a new Harry's Farm video, and there's been a slight delay on this one because this week we were hoping to be drilling or seeding, putting the winter linseed in the ground ready for next year's harvest. But the weather has intervened, and the forecast now is for 2 weeks of dry weather, which is not what you want when you're drilling. You just want a bit of rain before you put the seed in. If it goes dry and you put a crop in, you immediately, normal practice is to immediately go on and spray something called a pre-emergent herbicide. And a pre-emergent herbicide is a weed killer that goes over the ground and it zaps a weed if it comes through the soil. But if your soil is super dry and that seed still germinates from down below, it'll come up and it won't touch the herbicide and it grows away. So you might as well not bother putting the herbicide on. So there's always this dilemma this time of year. Do you put a crop into a dry seed bed, lovely conditions, but your herbicide won't work? Or do you just wait until there's a bit of rain forecast and then everything works swimmingly because you've got huge capacity we can drill a lot of acres very quickly and then get the herbicide on in time. So that's what we're doing. So suddenly this is what is it's fun part of farming in a way, and why we're always discussing the weather, because everything hinges on the weather. It's like running a factory producing food without a roof on. So you time what you do in your factory to what the weather's doing up above. So at the moment we're now into moisture preservation. So I'm out with this big set of rolls. It's a 12-metre set of rolls. They're very heavy, 6-8 tons or something like that. And I'm going to roll all the area that I've cultivated to try and preserve moisture, just reduce the surface area. If you look over here, right, this is a cultivated bit of ground, as you can see here. Do you want to just look at the ground? So that is all cultivated up, and it actually has a bigger surface area, so it will dry out quicker in this state. If I roll it, basically, if I'm gonna come along and roll it, I get rid of the clods, flatten off the look of the soil, and suddenly it has a reduced surface area and doesn't dry out as quick. So that's what I'm doing with this. It's a very quick operation. You go about 10 kilometers an hour and you rattle around the field. It's a noisy operation. It's a very distinctive noise. Might just drop it in now. The other two things I was going to do in this video is just touch on some of the comments you've made on the previous videos. One, you seem to want to know why the arable area isn't organic like the grass is, and also there was a sort of slight flurry of comments when I mentioned that we were using Roundup glyphosate as a key part of the management. So I'm going to touch on that as well. And you're probably wondering why I've got a fork in my hand. Well, I just want to check the ground here, because what happens, I've cultivated all this ground and we're not ploughing anymore. The key thing with arable farming at the moment is something called min-till or zero-till. You're trying to minimise the amount of work you do on the soil before you put the next crop in. The idea of that is it minimises the amount of weed seed coming up to the surface that you have to deal with, and also it makes it cheaper to establish a crop. The kit is quite expensive for min-till. The drills are really fancy machines these days. So I do a min-till rather than zero-till. And what I'm hoping to do is not disturb the soil too much. But you have to disturb it a little bit if you want to incorporate the straw, which I have to do with the type of drill we're using. So I've brought a fork along because I want to see if my mates, the earthworms, are here, because they're my new best friend, because they will help break down this straw, add nutrients to the soil and add humus, etc. So I'm going to dig and see if they're there. First of all, I have to get through, it's quite stony, this soil, so it's a bit of a struggle to try and get that. I don't like the look of that either. That's a bit of an enemy number one. It's a giant great slug. Maybe you can see that. That is the downside of having straw around. Slugs love it as well, but we want earthworms rather than slugs, because slugs rather like to eat the seeds as well when they're coming up. Right, are there any earthworms there? Don't work with animals, they say when you're filming. First of all, the structure looks pretty good. That's soon breaking up, and just well, you can see you can make a seedbed out of that, especially on the top surface. We're not breaking into this lower level at all now. That hasn't been touched for a few years, so it's this tilth at the top surface where there he is. Where's he gone? There's an earthworm. Right, one earthworm. I'd like to find a few more, but I'm glad to see I think there's one just there. I missed it. But anyway, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build up those earthworms and just have that tilth on that top surface, and that will make a lovely seedbed. It's all about soil health this nowadays, and just having that crumbly soil like you see there that breaks up, and it makes a dead easy seedbed, and the crops grow away. Right, I've got a slight problem with the field next door, which I'm just going to show you now. Right, here's the problem we've got. The last two fields we combined, that big chopper on the back of the combine that chops all the straw up and throws it all out the back, wasn't working very well, and we've ended up with this. I don't know if you can just point down here, but we've got all this straw on the ground, and that is going to block the drill and just be a general nightmare. And again, slugs are going to love it down there. So, and it's actually too much for my carrier cultivator. It couldn't cope with the amount of straw. So we've gone out here with a stubble rake, as it's termed, and he's gone right over the field to try and spread it about. So I'm just going to have a look over there. And it's very quick, and it charges across with the tines, as you can see there, and it spreads the straw about. So we're trying this and going at an angle and seeing if that'll do the job. It's quite often used as an organic farmer tool, because you can just nip out weed seeds, and it does a very light job on the soil. Just gives it, and you just see that little bit of tilth coming up there, but it spreads the straw about. So I'm going to do this and then see if my carrier disc will do a job and actually bury this straw, because at the moment we can't drill this field, but I'm a little concerned that it actually looks even worse now we've come into the field of this. It's actually brought the straw to the surface and it looks even worse. But God, look at that great mat of the straw there. Yeah, the downside of a good yielding wheat crop, he's got guidance. Yeah, he has. I can see he's using that, so he's absolutely precise. There you are, just stirring it all up like that. You see how he's got radar steering it. That's absolutely perfect, side to side, because he's not actually touching the steering wheel. It tractor's steering itself really precisely. Very clever. Very clever, that guidance system. It's something I would love on my tractor. So he has to turn at the headland, press a button, and now the tractor's steering himself. He's no hands on the wheel as he goes past. And perfect fit between there. You see, absolutely to the line of what's cultivated and what's not cultivated. Clever stuff. Okay, it was just over a week ago we sprayed this field off with Roundup, glyphosate, and there was quite a lot of comments about that. How can you be using Roundup? Well, first of all, it's a key part of modern arable farming in Europe. It's how we manage the ground. It's how we've actually got to this min tillage. How many thousand millions of gallons of ag diesel are being saved because of Roundup, I have no idea. But it does mean that you can just do what we're doing here, tickle up the ground, and you get the weeds to grow, and then you spray it off. And as I say, previously what you used to do is total inversion. Ploughing is a very heavy draft, big tractors needed, slow operation, and it burns a lot of diesel, and it tends then to bring problems as well, because you've got a clay substructure underneath, and then you've got to try and make a seedbed out of it, more diesel burnt, rotivate, etc. And I'm suspicious, and most British farmers are, of the claims that it's Roundup, glyphosate, is actually carcinogenic. There has been one case in America proves that this all tumbles from. The chemical has been in use for decades. There hasn't been a sudden surge of other people claiming that it's carcinogenic anywhere in Europe. You wear full protective clothing with all agri-chemicals. The dose of it is around a kilo a hectare if you're using Power Max granules or something like that. It's minimal, and the operators are really not exposed. You've got your gloves on, you've got your visors, all the sort of things we have to do for the red tractor symbol in the UK. Minimises your contact with the chemical to just about zero. And there are insecticides, there's all sorts of other chemicals. And insecticides, if you think about them, a nerve poison. That's how you kill an insect, and that's a living thing. And I'd be much more concerned on some of the insecticides than something like glyphosate, which is a herbicide. It's so universally used throughout the world. For me, if it really was a problem, we would have got to hear about it. And there's just this one case that everything seems to rest on. I need more evidence to stop using it, because I just can't farm in a modern way without having that tool in the toolbox, and being able to min-till and to be able to spray off the weeds like this to get a lovely seed bed, and then that minimises the herbicides I then use going forward to get this crop to harvest. But this is actually where we expected to be drilling. So what I'm now doing is this is all going to be left here, and hopefully in another week or so we'll be back out here drilling, and I'll go and show you how that all works. So right now I'm just going to move down to where the sheep are, down in Wells Head, down the bottom there, and just talk about organic farming and why we're not doing it on the arable as well as the grassland. Here's all the grassland down here. You can see the sheep right down the bottom there. They're just getting weaned at the moment. The lambs have been taken away, but they're over there. They graze all the way through here. And this, as I said in a previous video, we farm organically. It hasn't had any sprays or fertiliser on it ever since we've been here. We got this in 2002, and probably some time before that as well. You have this buffer zone, 4-5 metre, I can't remember the exact width, between the organic area and then the conventionally farmed arable area, which then goes up here. And quite a few of you saying, well, why don't you just farm the whole lot as organic? It's not that easy. Trying to do arable organic is tricky. You need a very big livestock enterprise to bolt on. At the moment, I can quite easily bolt on a livestock enterprise for the grass onto the main arable. What we do here is mainly arable, I suppose, on this farm. That's an easy combination. Once you start trying to do arable, grow crops organically, you basically, a livestock farm is the bigger mass, and then you farm the organic oats and wheat, etc., as part of your organic farm, because suddenly grass comes a critical part of the rotation on the arable. That's how you get the fertility in the soil, by having put grass down with clovers, graze it with livestock. That puts the nutrients back on. You then come in and plough it, actually, because that's your main sort of herbicide. You can't use Roundup as we do here, so you're having to plough, bury the weeds, put a crop in, and you don't get very many crops before you're back to grass again. So the key thing with growing an arable organically is it's a big livestock unit, and I just couldn't do it. I'd have to employ people to look after livestock, and it just changes the model completely. I couldn't do it on the scale I am. There is a very good organic operation next door to me, but they do it over about 2,500 acres, and they combine the farms, and that's a possibility of doing it like that. But I much rather farm conventionally and love the science of it, and seeing what we can do and minimise the amount of passes, and use a satellite technology to get really accurate use of agri-chemicals and nitrogen, and then in with a combine and seeing the yield maps, etc. I mean, I do actually combine with a neighbour. The sprayer I use here is a 36 metre wide Bateman. It's a £200,000 machine. I couldn't justify it on the acres here. He justifies it by doing mine and some other people around here, and we basically have all banded together so John can do all this cropping, and it's just the most amazing, incredibly accurate, and it turns off the nozzles so it can't overspray. So it's a gadget, wonderful gadget. I will show you around it one of these days. But that's how it works on this farm. I love how the valley is just organic grass, and it's like a time warp when you go down there, and how we rear the stock down there. But I can't do organic arable up here. So I hope that gives you a bit more of an insight into this latest Harry's Farm video. Please carry on subscribing. Thanks ever so much for the comments. I'll try and answer some more in the next video, and you'll be joining me, I expect, in another week, and hopefully we'll be joining by then. Thanks for watching.